Hi everyone, and welcome to my second video in my Tarot Back to Basics series, and in this video I'm going to be looking at the Bright Idea deck by Mark McElroy with illustrations from Eric Hotz. And I've actually wanted this deck for quite a long time because when I first heard about it I thought it was absolutely fascinating, and it's another deck which takes the principle of the structure of tarot and does something a little bit different with it and takes it to a kind of intrinsic meaning, and isn't necessarily terribly heavy in symbolism, although there is some symbolism in it, and is a bit more direct in its association. So just to let you know what comes with the deck, we have a guidebook, very nice guidebook, which comes with the deck, 202 pages, that's included in the box, and the deck itself has got the usual number of cards plus two guide cards. Those are the backs of the cards, by the way. Bright idea, you see. And we get the suit associations. So the trump cards are about methods, motivations and influences. Those are the equivalent of the major arcana. And then we've got red cards, blue cards, yellow cards and green cards. And I am going to kind of assume, based on some of what is here, that the reds are the equivalent of rods, so actions, desires, goals and intentions. Blues are the equivalents of cups, emotions, perceptions, intuitions, reactions and prejudices. Yellows are to do with swords, air, decisions, logic, strategies, responses and judgment. And greens are pentacles, earth, material resources, five senses, physical objects and environment. So you can see there how they're associated. They are not, in the deck, they are not talked about as equivalents to the traditional suits. They are things in their own right, so you don't actually need to know anything about the tarot suits in order to use that. And then number associations in terms of the way the numbers work in these cards. 1 is opportunity, 2 is duality, 3 productivity, 4 stability, 5 instability, 6 flexibility, 7 psychology, 8 activity, 9 totality and 10 finality. So I like these number associations. I think they're quite elegant. Also, to let you know, there are the equivalent of court cards in this, and the cards in question are the categories in question. Instead of page, knight, queen, king, we have learning, doing, feeling and controlling. And again, I'm going to assume that learning is about pages, or it's what would be the equivalent of pages, doing the equivalent of knights, feeling the equivalent of queens, and controlling the equivalent of kings. Now obviously already you can see there are some limitations there, because there are certain assumptions being made about what each of the core cards means and doesn't mean. And so if you do try to come to this trying to, sort of looking at it and thinking, well, feeling is the equivalent of queen, but I don't think queens are all about feeling, they're about other things, then probably you're going to be turned off this deck. So I would suggest you come at it and allow it to be its own thing, and to not worry too much about the equivalent of the core cards relating to particular things or particular meanings, and just let the cards speak for themselves. And possibly that's the same as the trumps. So let's go through them. So I'll start off with trumps and then we'll go through the suits. So in terms of the trumps, and they're colour coded, so the trumps are all colour coded with a purple border. And bearing in mind that the suit associations for the trumps, these are methods, motivations and influences. So this is about creative brainstorming. The book that comes with it is called Creative Brainstorming. And Mark McElroy actually wrote another book called Putting the Tarot to Work, which is a very practical book about how tarot cards can be used in the workplace for creative activities, problem solving, decision making and personal career planning. So it's a very interesting book, one of my favourites. So the trumps in this are about methods, motivations and influences in the context of that kind of creative brainstorming approach. So 0, freedom. 1, capability. And can I just say, at this point, I have to say, because I've got to get it out of my system, one of the things I immediately find difficult about this deck is that some of the characters on it, particularly this bloke in a suit with a red tie, I can't help it, just makes me think of Donald Trump, which kind of puts me off. So no disrespect to anyone out there who is not perturbed by that, but I am. So I might have to colour the tie in a different colour or something just to get past that. He doesn't really look like Donald Trump, but except he kind of does. 2 is intuition. 3, nurturing. Now you can see, unlike in the previous deck that I did, which was the tarot therapy deck, there are, I think, much clearer associations with the traditional tarot cards in this. So the Empress, nurturing. 3. 4, authority. If that guy had a Donald Trump hairstyle, I really would not be able to work with the deck, but thankfully he doesn't. And 5, we seem to have Indiana Jones as the Hierophant. That's okay. 6, passion. 7, advancement. Interesting chariot card on a Segway. Balance. 8. So obviously here it looks as though, well, that could be strength, couldn't it? Because of the strength required to balance, but it also hints more at judgment, justice rather, as number 8. And also we've got the sign of Libra. So that's interesting. I think there's a definite hint to it. We'll see what comes up for 11 anyway. So 9, experience with the Hermit. Luck. Well, yeah, boldness, 11, and it's got the sign of Leo. So again, I would say this seems to be saying, yes, strength. And yeah, he's got a big dumbbell and is lifting it. So, whoops, this is strength. And now I've just messed up my order. So that was 11. 12, perspective. 13, passage. 14, synthesis. Now, where's 15? Shadow. Looking at yourself as a devil once your masks are off. 16, demolition. 17, optimism. 18, fantasy, the moon. Some of the symbols of the moon obviously are there, and the moon itself. Sun is energy. Judgment, examination, examining your teeth. And then wholeness for the world. Very nice. So those are the trumps. So in terms of the yellow cards, let's say they are just the yellow cards. In my mind, I'm thinking here swords, air, just for comparison's sake. Ace, choice. 2, debate. 3, variance. And remember, the yellow cards are about decisions, logic, strategies, responses, and judgment. Contemplation. 4. Irrationality. 5. And 6, science. Now, of course, in the Thoth deck, 6 of Swords is in fact science, so there's a definite connection there. 7, assumptions. 8, restriction. 9, conclusion. 10, a possession. And then the court card, if you want to call them that, learning and information. Might say the page. The knight, doing. And again, Mark McElroy is not saying this is the knight. I'm thinking of it as the knight. Queen is feeling, aptitude. And then controlling, verdict. Those are the yellow cards. So the blue cards, which are about emotions, perceptions, intuitions, reactions, and prejudices. 1, motivation. 2, union. 2 of cups. So there's some definite links in my mind. But those links wouldn't be there if I didn't know the tarot already. And if I picked this up on its own without knowing the tarot, I could still use it. I think it's intuitive enough and clear enough. A celebration. That it could be used without knowing the tarot. So it works as a deck in its own right, and I can see how this would work in a workplace setting, particularly for people who are not into tarot. 5, loss. 6, sacrifice. 7 imagination, 8 dissatisfaction, 9 satisfaction, 10 overwhelmed. And then we have the learning of blue, impression, the doing of blue, illumination, the feeling of blue, instinct, and the controlling of blue, restraint. Okay, and moving on to the reds, which are actions, desires, goals, and intentions. Desire, conflict, action, teamwork, confrontation. Are you matching this up in your mind with your conceptualization of, in this case, the 6 of rods? Achievement, 7 resolve, 8 response. Interesting. And it's interesting for me because the 8 of rods in some decks, to me, particularly the Rider-Waite, is about those sticks flying off into the air. It's very much about forward motion, is about action, but in some decks means fall, so something coming downwards rather than going upwards, and this seems to suggest the action of responding to something that's falling. So interesting. 9 of rods, release. Sorry, 9 of red, release. 10 of red, exhaustion. So it's like the guy with the 10 rods on his back. Then the learning of red, validation. Doing of red, persuasion. The feeling of red, collaboration. And the controlling of red, direction. And then finally the greens, which are about material resources, the 5 senses, physical objects, and the environment. Receiving, decision, 3 of green, expression, 4 of green, preservation, 5 of green, which is the equivalent of course of the 5 of pentacles, crisis, 6 cooperation, 7 evaluation, 8 effort, 9 is enough, interesting, 10 acquisition, and the learning of green, preparation, the doing of green, invention. Good cardstock, quite solid. Laminated, not over laminated. Feeling of green, comfort, and the controlling of green, intervention. So I think quite interesting as a deck in its own right. I think it could work very well in creative brainstorming, in problem solving. Certainly I think would be fairly accessible for people who are not used to tarot but who are interested in learning more about how to use a system like this. So again, if you have got any thoughts on this deck, if you've got it, if you have worked with it, just turn the light off spontaneously. If you've worked with it, if you have any experience of using this or similar decks, then I'd love to hear from you in the comment below. And that has been the second and final of my 2 Tarot Back to Basics videos. So I've shared with you 2 decks which I think are quite interesting if you want to go back to the basics of tarot and look at fairly foundational meanings for the cards. But do you agree with those foundational meanings? That is always the question. So, hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll be back again very soon. Take care everyone, bye.